Hello, everyone, and welcome to It's a Numbers Game. I'm Adam Morris, and joining me as always is my co host, Daniel Welling. Together, we delve into the strategies, solutions, and stories that help MSPs thrive. And in this episode, we're joined by Vincent, the Managing Director of Vitrix, a leading reseller that's reshaping how MSPs approach procurement and partnerships. In this episode, you'll learn when and why MSPs should consider buying from a reseller instead of a distributor, how resellers like Vitrix can add value with flexible payment terms, open book pricing, and key strategies for mitigating risks, improving cash flow, and leveraging partnerships. So please welcome Vincent.
So Vince, great to have you on the show with Adam and I today. As we often do before we click record, we talk in the green room about what we're actually going to talk about. And the question we were posing was, when should an MSP buy from a reseller instead of a distributor? So perhaps we could start there.
Yeah, hi Adam, hi Daniel, thank you for having me today. Yes, well, there's a few benefits there. One of them, I suppose, you need to build trust to make sure that we're not going to go and steal your customer. But there's a few advantages. So one of the first MSPs I ever sold to, the problem he had was where he'd bought a bunch of equipment. It had been sitting in his warehouse for a couple of weeks. The project got delayed by several months. The distributor was then saying, right, time to pay, and he's panicking. So whereas he's normally working on some decent double digit, maybe 20, 30% margins on the, I think it was UPSs it was supplying, single digits, and he's panicking because he's not got the cash flow to do it. So I just happened to be speaking to him and I said, okay, I'll buy them off you and sell them back to you. So I think I gave him 60 days payment terms. It wasn't very credit worthy, but I took a bit of a punt on it because he was a nice chap. So, and he brought them back to me. And then from then ongoing, we've been doing lots of business for many years, and they're now a very strong partner of ours. Sorry.
And that's certainly probably not a story you'd hear from someone talking about a mainline distributor, even having a conversation with a person if you're not a managed account with a predefined credit limit. So how did you end up talking to that MSP out of interest?
Well, fun enough, I met a few mutual customers. So we were supplying the IT equipment, and they are actually installing all the equipment to desk for the customers. So they didn't have I think originally they supplied bits and bobs to the customer, but they didn't really have the cash flow. The company got very large, and it was a retailer now, over 800 outlets. When they first came to England, they could deal with it a bit here and there, but then suddenly it was getting into the hundreds of thousands of every project, and they just didn't have the cash flow. But I think, funny enough, Daniel, I think the first time I met you was at a go-karting event. And what did we do the next day? Sold you loads of equipment.
That's right, exactly right. So that's over a decade ago then.
Wow, we're still doing business. But that's the thing but one thing we do is we'll go completely open book with people. We'll say, look, because we've got all the accreditations, the platinum gold accreditations for everyone, we'll just say, rather than give you a price and say, here's our buy price, go and see what you can do, we'll give you our buy price and say, we've got a bid, this is our price on it. We'll work on what margin you want to pay us, because we're looking for long-term relationships. We don't want to make a quick buck. If I give you a price of, say, £100 a unit and you're trying to sell it for 110, when my buy price is 80, it's better if I tell you my buy price and you can do a deal and then come back to me. And because it's a business we wouldn't have got, so we appreciate it. And some of those have worked into, turned into some really great relationships where people have left and gone off to other organisations and they've taken us with them. But it's building the trust. You need to have the trust here to make sure that, one, we're going to deliver it. Two, we're going to deliver it on time, every time. Obviously, the courier is a bit of the bane of most of our people's lives. When people buy stuff isn't turned up, they seem to think it's the reseller, but it's the courier that's having a bad day and decided to go home rather than deliver your item. But we've got a fix for that as well. We send a courier to the courier. I've done that many times before.
So Vince, can we just hover over this pricing conundrum? Because this is obviously going to be top of mind for a lot of buyers, especially when margins are thin. So let's go back to play school. So ordinarily you'd expect a disti to provide more of a margin than a reseller if you're an MSP. Am I right, first of all, with that assumption?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Just as an overall assumption, because distis are buying in larger quantities and their role is different to a reseller, ordinarily yep. I'd expect a larger margin from a disti compared to a reseller for the same product.
I suppose it all depends on volume. One thing we've got the beauty of, because we're shifting lots of equipment all the time, we get to gauge where the pricing should be. So one thing we can see is that we know roughly when someone asks for a certain item, we know where, based on that roadmap, how much equipment they've got, where we can gauge it and what the price should be. And one thing we do see is, especially when people are buying direct from vendors as well, people get into a relationship with a vendor they're buying direct, they've got nowhere to gauge it really. They can probably gauge it against Google and the price they can find there. But when you're buying volume, one thing we do is we look at the bigger picture. I've just chatting to a guy a minute ago, he wants 50 laptops, and we're saying, well, okay, what's your refresh policy? It's 4 years. Okay, let's apply for a bid based on the 4 year rather than just the 50 units you want now. So, and it's making sure that, one, we've got the roadmap for the client, so that one thing I said to him is that if you're going to buy some machines now and you want some in January and February, let's just make sure those machines are still going to be available rather than you have to recreate a new image, and maybe we'll give you some extended payment terms so you can buy them now, we'll store them for you, and you can call them off as and when you want them.
And so I'm hearing obviously there's a lot of value add then that you're providing to your client, and I absolutely can understand how in several circumstances that value is worth a few points of margin. Are you saying on the pricing part then that sometimes you'll be the same, sometimes you might be a little bit higher or a lower margin rather, but on some occasions you might even beat the disty from a pricing perspective?
Well, if we're buying direct from the vendor, then yes, but most of the time, a lot of the product we are now buying from distribution, but it's because we're buying so much more than an MSP would be buying. Mm-hmm. So they'll look at the bigger picture. It may be that we've got a deal now today for a client, and they ask for a favor. Can we do this pricing point for a client? It may be we don't make any money on it, we even make a loss on it, but we look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
Down the line, we've got some servers coming, and there's some better margin there. You're probably into double digits if you're lucky on some servers, whereas the day-to-day stuff, laptops, screens, it's all single digits. But we just, based on volume, we just shift a lot of it to make the money.
One of the bears of my time with the disties was that you'd phone up for a certain laptop, screen, whatever it was, and they'd say, "What's the part number?" And you go, "Well, I haven't a chuffing clue what the part number is." That's your job, isn't it? But I guess that might be a sort of key difference.
No, definitely, and that's the thing. We get people ring up and they say, "Oh, can we have a TV thing?" And we know what they want. But the other thing is that because we sell to customers on volume, they may get a 10-pin there or something. They ring up, they don't really know what they want, mm-hmm. But we know based on that company, that profile, we know that they always buy a certain item. So it's just making sure they've got consistency and maybe advise that you need to buy this one because that's the standard for your organisation rather than the one you've just actually asked for.
But I think just going back to Adam's first assumption was that if I'm further on in the value chain, I'm an MSP / reseller, buying from distribution should be less than buying from one of my peers, or indeed I would expect the vendor not to be selling to the end user at the same price that they're quoting me, which is something that happens a lot with certainly tier one vendors that have an end user direct channel as well as a channel. Is that right? Like, is it channel? Anyway, but so yeah, and a common gripe from a lot of MSPs I know is that the end user can very easily find the same product online from the vendor direct, so not even from an untrustworthy source. It's from the vendor that they know, and it undervalues what the MSP's position is at that point because it looks like they're not being well served by their MSP.
Exactly. What we find is that when a product's coming to the end of life, typically a lot of the product won't go out to distribution. It will appear on the vendor's website. So they just want to clear the stock, so they do deals. And we found that we can, with the relationships we've got with the vendors, we can get that matched or beaten a lot of the time. Just because it happens with all vendors and has done for many years. There's always a deal on there where they'll try and do it cheaper, but it's normally on small quantity. If you want to, if you're looking to buy a couple of 100 units, it's probably just whatever they've got left or left in stock, and then next time around you can't buy the same item, which for some companies doesn't matter, but there's a lot of consistency. A lot of the equipment we supply is configured to order, so it's all built specific for that client to make sure we've got the maximum, got the deal registration in place, we've got the bid there, and it is the best possible price they can do. And we engage the vendor as well to make sure that they're talking to the client and the client is getting exactly what is fit for purpose and their requirement.
And I guess there's a question there I have around volume. and size of the end client. So I know from our conversations that you're dealing with some pretty sizable end user businesses selling thousands of units, whereas a good deal of the MSP community are dealing with SMEs, and therefore tens and hundreds are the sort of typical volumes. So in effect, are we saying here that the difference between buying tens and hundreds and buying thousands gives you additional margin that then effectively you can share with the MSP and still make a margin yourself?
Yeah. And the other thing is, a lot of MSPs are probably maybe sitting in the unmanaged team. So they're called distribution. They're not dealing with the same person each time. They haven't got consistency. So what happens, you speak to some guy and he's brilliant. Next day you get someone else that's not particularly good. No one seems to know what's happened with your order. You're ringing the next day. Was it shipped? Wasn't it shipped? Suddenly we had an instance when we first started. We went through so many account managers because we don't take passengers. So if we're shifting a lot of volume, we want someone who's going to give us a high level of service. And I don't know what it is. You always seem to get, in the old days, we used to get a brilliant account manager and then suddenly they get promoted to a team leader. And suddenly you get the new kid who's just clipped off his skateboard to help you out. So it is. And that's the thing, because we're doing lots of volume, we do get taken seriously by a lot of distributors, and we've got some great relationships. So if we don't get the level that we feel we have, we sometimes boycott them for a little while. It's only, where's the business? But we do now have those relationships where we can, if we need to, press the right buttons at the senior level and get the resource there to make sure that the deal's done. Anyone can shift boxes. It's when things go wrong. So what do you do to fix it? And because we've got long-term relationships, I've got one client we've been dealing with for 26 years, I think. But it's the trust. It's knowing that when you order it, it's like Amazon. 100% of the time you order Amazon, it's going to turn up. So it's making sure you've got that trust. The way in our life, as I said before, is the courier. We're really good at processing things, really proactive, and making sure the customer gets consistency each time.
Really interesting you should mention Amazon as well, because again, I know a good number of MSPs that are buying from Amazon, and so, as you say, it's reliable, it's consistent, the price is keen. So of course that isn't necessarily going to serve the all deal formats and profiles, but again, if MSPs are buying from Amazon the same way an end user could buy from Amazon, then again, buying from other resellers and from their peers certainly is, I think it's more acceptable than it perhaps would have been. The traditional hierarchy of I buy from the distributor and sell to the end user is no longer valid.
Yeah, well, fun enough, in lockdown, people were, a lot of people selling they were selling masks and PP, all the stuff, a lot of people cashing in it. We didn't do it because I know a lot of people got slated for doing it. But we've got two companies. One was a data center. We sold him £750,000 worth of screens. He was selling them on Amazon. We didn't. It's a lot of hassle when you're selling to Joe Blogs because he's going to take it out of the box, throw the box away, and then want to send it back. But you've got the protection that comes when you're dealing with consumers. So we kept that at arm's length. But he bought a lot from us, and fun enough, he paid for them all on his American Express card as well. We offered a credit limit for him, but he said no, I want to get the air miles. So will he make any profit or just getting some air miles? I don't know. But also the other funny thing is I've got a friend who's got a company and he's selling ladders, and in lockdown he wasn't selling many ladders. So he spoke to my friend who's got a cleaning company and just said, "Can I sell some of your cleaning products?" He said, "We don't really sell them. They just do lots of big cleaning projects." But he said, "I've got a friend that sells monitors. He's selling a lot of them at the moment." So he didn't buy hundreds, but he did buy hundreds, but he bought quite a lot of pallet loads of monitors and started selling those, and was quite successful as well. But I think it's because there was a shortage. People weren't necessarily buying them because they were a great price. It's the fact there was such a shortage of stuff. This guy was putting some really big margins on there. We were working on tiny margins, but it made him some money and got him some holidays as well, I think.
And we've pretty much covered then the sort of different aspects you might consider when you're buying or selling something. We've talked about price. We've talked about level of service. Availability, as you say, there is a factor. And interesting that you mentioned about paying by Amex, because again, I know a number of MSPs that do enjoy that benefit. So in effect, it sounds like you can emulate a good distribution relationship, even though you are a reseller.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. It's all about efficiency. And one thing we've done is we invested a lot of money and time into an automated system. So it's very slick. You create a quote. We've got livestock pricing and availability straight into our quote. That converts to an order. And from an order, it's all linked to the invoices. So our invoices, if the quote's right, the invoice will be correct as well. And that's what people gauge you on. I think I've spoken to some of the sales guys before, and I said, people aren't just buying from you, it's the whole of the back office and how efficient is it? Because they're the people that make you look good. There's loads of sales guys out there that can promise you, yeah, well, that's in stock, you can have it tomorrow. And then the customer's ringing, going, where is it? So you need to be constant, I think, a high level of service, making sure that people will build that trust you. When you go meet a customer, one, they need to like you and need to trust you. But until you've started doing business, they haven't got that trust.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that the level of service is, if it's not number one, maybe price is number one, but it's certainly a very close second to the price. When you're making promises and looking to manage the expectations of end clients, it's really vital to know when the laptop will arrive, if there's an issue with it, who's going to deal with it, being kept abreast of changes in expectations. All of those things are absolutely vital. And there really is significant value, in my view, in having those with whichever partner you have in terms of procurement.
It's like, well, that's the thing. It's time, isn't it? At the end of the day, people want to order stuff. They want it to be delivered. If there's a problem, they just want it fixed. You don't have to be on the phone for ages. And the good thing here is you can deal with one person. In Victrix, a pre-sales person, the sales guy's pre-sales, post-sales, he'll do everything for you. They'll bend over backwards. And because they're all coin operated, you can probably ring them at midnight and they'll answer the phone and sort your problem out for you.
I've got a funny picture in my mind now of your office, and we'll see if AI can generate that image for us.
We're going to take a quick break whilst I quickly introduce MSP Finance Team, the hosts of this podcast. You started your MSP to help business owners master technology. Isn't it time you were rewarded for that? MSP Finance Team helps hard-working MSP owners finally get the profit, time, and control they deserve. With better financial and strategic insight, you can make better decisions, leading to more control, profit, and time. Our approach is unique. We focus exclusively on MSP businesses, and we meld bookkeeping, CFO as a service, accounting, and mentoring to help you get started, scale, or sell. We bring you the freedom to focus on what's important, whether it's growing your business strategically or enjoying spontaneous moments with your family. So visit mspfinanceteam.com today and take the first step towards financial mastery. Because when it comes to your MSP finances, it's not just business, it's a numbers game.
So we've covered quite a few areas there. My next question though is to try and pick out some of the negatives here, because we talked about a really positive opportunity. That there will be risk, and there will be MSPs listening to this conversation saying, but what about? So my first question is there a risk, or how do you mitigate the risk of an MSP being concerned that maybe they're introducing a competitor into their customer environment? That would be my first query.
Well, the first thing I did is I found this guy that does podcasts who used to be an MSP, got him to give me a fantastic review. That's the thing, that we don't offer any services ourselves. We do offer services, but we use partners, because what we wouldn't be able to do is turn the tap on and off when we want them. And obviously, you can't be experts in every field. And I think even if you look at some of the really big resellers out there, they're using partners. You can't be a cyber expert and a core network, putting CNS networks in. You can't be an expert in every field, but lots of people need to offer that. But when we do work with partners, we don't say Victrix are doing it. We'll tell you that that partner, and that's the name they are doing it. So they appreciate that. And I think for us, it can, it's rare you may get an issue, but if we use a partner to deliver a project and for some reason it goes wrong, we can put a new partner in there and maintain our relationship still, and they appreciate that. Fun enough, we did use a partner once to go and install a load of IT equipment at a load of sites for us, and the partner decided to try and go direct to our customer, who we've had a relationship for a very long time. And the customer said, "Get rid of him. I don't want to use him now." We did manage to sort the problem out and get him to do it in the end.
So the query I had has happened to you, and you were protected by the strength of relationship you had with your customer.
Exactly, and that's the thing, that it comes down to relationships, doesn't it? And the sales guy will never do that again. I know the owner of that business. The sales guy was given a slap for doing it, because he was trying to do it, because they don't normally do that. We'll sign an NDA with people, but you don't bite the hand that feeds you. And I keep saying to my sales guys, MSPs are an easy bet. You can go and bring a customer and sell him 5 laptops, or you can ring an MSP who's got 100 customers and need 5 laptops. It's a lot easier, and they've got the relationship. And you can ring a new client, you can sell him a toner. And if you're in one of the certain resellers, they'll probably ring a bell and everyone's cheering. Or you can go and sell to an MSP, and he's got all those, he can fast track you in there with a relationship. And fun enough, we work very closely with leasing companies. I previously worked for a leasing company for 24 years, and I just identified all the invoices coming in and how much different the price was on every invoice. So we've got a close relationship with them now. So it's just making sure the customer's getting a fair deal. But when you get an intro into the FD, an FD can sometimes be a better bet, because IT guys don't really care where it comes from. They've got a relationship, been buying from the same people for years. They don't like change. You get in front of an FD and they'll rip your arm off. You can save them some money. And then you get a nice hostile introduction into the IT guy who's going, who's this guy?
And it sounds like there might also be an opportunity in reverse then for MSPs that you work with, insofar as you'd be able potentially to introduce MSPs into some of your clients if they weren't already associated to another one of your MSP clients.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's the thing. We've got a handful of different ones, and that's the thing, because people buy in relationships. So we're busy recruiting at the moment. We've had 5 new sales guys come in this year, but they've all come from different backgrounds. They've all got relationships, and one of them, funny enough, has come from a reseller, but they've got a services arm that do some brilliant cyber stuff. So we're actually using them to do the cyber stuff, although they're a competitor. But it's the trust, isn't it?
Okay, really interesting. So there are somewhere between 4,000 and 12,000 MSPs in the UK, subject to who you believe, including the government offering one of those numbers, and probably not every one of those will be in a position where they can buy from you or have a relationship. So for those listeners that maybe won't pick up the phone and get in contact and start a relationship with you, perhaps there's some general tips, suggestions that we can sort of summarize for our listeners that they could take away from this podcast and implement in their business. We've talked, for example, about the importance of that, having that level of service in terms of following up, but any other tips that spring to mind?
Yeah, I'd say that for a new business, cash flow is key, really. Just keep an eye on your people, or on your clients, making sure they're paying you, and keep an eye on your bank balance as well. So I was quite fortunate when I started Vitrix. I had a business partner, and he had 100 people plus in his business. So I had a ready-made MD, FD, so I could grow and scale the business quite easily. Quite fortunately, because he had a good reputation, we had good banking terms implemented straight away. I've now bought him out, but without that, it would be quite tough to get going and scale the business up. When, I think it's because I had the reputation before. I think we had an order within the first week for about £250,000. And that's actually, fun enough, was a lead for a big client I was dealing with before, but they just gave me the credit. We had another one for 160 grand. The credit was just given to me straight away. So I think it's reputation, who you know, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the topics around credit that Adam and I often talk about, probably more in the services side than the product supply side, but is that we think the solution to credit management is not to give any credit in the first place, but of course that's not always practical or possible. So the ability to offer credit presumably is key to doing some of these larger product sales that you're involved in.
Give someone 30 days payment terms, and they'll probably pay on 60. Mm-hmm. We've had one before. He's like, "Can you send my payment terms?" It's like, "Well, you've got 30. You're paying on 60. If I give you 60, when will you be paying? Will it be 90 or 120?" Mm-hmm. So, but you're almost becoming a bank a lot of the time. And some of the deals that we've turned down before, where there's just crazy. I think we were going to make £2,500 or £250,000. And that was from our rebate. They expected us to sell at cost. And that company's just gone bust recently, at least. I'm glad I didn't do that one. But people do expect you to be a bank a lot of the time. And we do have instances where there's certain sectors that are renowned for just knocking each other. They quote a cost of knocking each other. In the construction industry, we found before. I was even told that by the bank when we first started. But there's quite a few companies that have been struggling in that industry recently. I think they've gone to the wall. But hopefully it'll pick up soon. But it's just, I think it comes down to how well do you know your customer and do you trust them? Because everyone wants credit, but then when it comes to paying you, my poor finance girl is just ringing people over and over again. You hear the same thing. But you'll find there's a pattern emerges. When someone doesn't pay you once, it's normally the same customers that don't pay you. And then we've got some other ones. One thing, we've built up some really good trust with our suppliers. One of the distributors gave me a £2.7 million credit limit probably about 5 years ago. Our customer paid on pro forma. So we paid them the next day. I said, hopefully you'll need £5 million. You'll give me the money. So...
and that's exactly the perfect scenario that we'd be recommending. If you can get paid in advance by your client and get credit from your supplier, then that's actually giving you positive cash flow and is the utopia.
And I was just going to say to you, Vince, so in terms of MSP clients out there that you work with, obviously prompt payment is probably near the top of the list of the behaviours that you like to see. What would be those other things, though, that you like to see in terms of a working relationship with MSPs? Because ultimately, this is a partnership. And so I guess what are some of those things that they can do to help themselves, if you like?
I think one thing some of my sales guys do is go and work in their office for a day because one thing you don't notice is what business you're missing out on. So I've got a few sales guys. They go and sit in customer sites, go and sit in their IT department, and you can see what's going on there. So we've got one customer, we've got 300 people in their IT department. It's very large. So we don't necessarily supply everything in there, but when he goes along and sits in the office, identify where we can help them, where we can add value. Mm-hmm. And the same note, it's like, oh, I didn't realise you do that. Maybe you do audio visual. You can screw some stuff to the wall for us. We've got a few projects coming up with that. So I think it definitely helps when you sit inside the customer's business or even just go along for a meeting and identify it. I was with one of my sales guys recently. We walked into reception. There was a load of Samsung screens there. I was like, why are you not supplying Samsung screens? We were by the time we left.
Yeah. So that whole realization that for a partner or a reseller to help you, you need to be open about your business, what you're doing, what type of customers you're working with, what type of services and products you're looking to resell, and sort of meet you halfway in building that relationship.
Yeah, and we like to make it a two-way relationship as well. It's not just selling everyone things. It's nice where I spend my life introducing people to each other. So I'm not necessarily making anything out of it, but that guy would be ideal for you. I'm Mr. Network as well, as is Daniel. So it's just thinking where people can add value and help each other.
And what a great way to summarise the whole sales topic is it's helping, not selling.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing that I've had many clients and prospects for years. There's one customer, it took me, when I left the last company, it took me 8 years to get back in there. But what I was doing, I was just sending information every now and again to the guy going, I think this will be useful for you. I get nothing out of it, but it's a great product for him. So eventually it's maintaining that relationship. It's a bit like leasing companies. Some of the leasing companies, they'll do a lease for something. How many times can you ring a guy and ask him how his lease is going on his photocopier? They introduced us in there, and we're supplying stuff day to day, keyboards, mice, all the stuff. We've got an ongoing relationship, and a project pops up, and we go, oh, by the way, you might want to ring your chap who's got an opportunity coming up for a load of storage or servers.
And of course, that really dovetails into the MSP topic of having regular client contact, being proactive, having a roadmap, knowing what's going on in their business to be able to position your business to help them along their journey. So yeah, interesting stuff. We're probably around about the optimum episode length. So I think we've covered a huge amount of ground today, more than I thought we might. So we normally offer our guests the opportunity for a shameless plug, although I kind of feel like we've been doing that all the way through. But maybe if anyone wants to carry on the conversation, how best to get in touch?
If you look at the Vitrix website, it's vitrx.co.uk. Not with an extra I. Everyone puts the extra I in there, so we have to buy that domain as well. Similar to the software company. So, or the phone number is 0800 849 0849. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Vincent O'Hanlon, and the company's Vitrix.
Super. Vince, as always, really enjoy talking to you, and here's to another decade or so of interesting conversations and working together in what's proven to be a really interesting industry for us both to be a part of. So thank you very much for your time today, and speak to you very soon.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here.
Thanks, Vin.
Good luck.